Hello, everybody. Welcome into PressBox Live. I'm Stan the Fan Charles of PressBox and PressBoxOnline.com. And we're going to talk some Orioles baseball and some baseball in general in just a minute. But let me tell you that, first of all, we are brought to you by Superbook. And now is the time to place both your baseball bets and your regular season football bets with Superbook Sports. Superbook is the most trusted name in Vegas. And now you can use promo code Stan Charles 23 to score up to $250 with their first bet bonus. Win or lose, they will match your first bet up to $250 with promo code Stan Charles 23, all one word with no spaces. Don't miss out both the end of this baseball season, the postseason, and football, and win some money with Superbook Sports and promo code Stan Charles 23. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem? 1-800-GAMBLER. And joining me now, Luke Jackson and Ross Grimsley. And guys, we had a pretty special sports day in Baltimore yesterday with the Ravens' nice victory against the Cincinnati Bengals. And more apropos to what we talk about every week, the Orioles clinching both a roster spot, a playoff spot, and getting back that lead up to 2 games. Luke, your thoughts on what transpired over the weekend?
Well, I think you wrote it in your power rankings this morning. The Orioles got punched in the mouth those first 2 days against the Rays, particularly the second one, a 7-1 loss at Camden Yards, when really the Rays kind of took it to them from start to finish. And to bounce back the way they did on Saturday with an 8-0 win. And then, for me, the biggest win of the year to this point, yesterday afternoon at Camden Yards, a wild last few innings, a much needed last few innings. You couldn't have, written the script quite like that, I don't think. But it's exactly what the Orioles needed, given the way the series started, and really given how that St. Louis series went with their bats going missing the last 2 games.
Ross, I know you're down in Florida, but you follow the Orioles as close as possible. You didn't see Saturday night's game, but I'm sure you've talked to a few people about the performance of Grayson Rodriguez. And frankly, I've always been a little bit suspicious of him because of how he was developed with short on innings pitched, but I didn't know whether he was capable of that kind of performance. It was like a maestro performance.
I saw some of the highlights of it pitching, and seeing him pitch in the past before he went down, and then when he came back. He's eliminated some pitches, made it simpler for him. He's got 3 pitches now, which makes it, there's not a lot of thinking. You go with, your best pitch, obviously, in whatever situation, whatever's working. But the other night, was absolutely fantastic. But that's what you're going to get from this kid. He's totally capable of doing that and duplicating it, which is really amazing and good for the team and good for him. But he's a guy, overpowering stuff. Good breaking ball. His changeup has really improved tremendously, which is a big pitch for him. He'll get a little erratic at times with his fastball, but going down, he worked on that. Throwing quality pitches with it, throwing some that look like strikes that hopefully sets up another pitch or gets guys to chase. But this guy has the stuff, and he is going to be. I look for him to really do something in the playoffs on a regular basis, probably every 5 days or so. So a 5-game series, they're going to be tough. Running the guys out they have. Again, the bullpen has to pick them up. But these guys the starters can give them some innings. They're going to be really tough because they're scoring runs. They make the plays. They're a very smart group of guys. And they're young guys that don't think they can lose, even though getting down on Tampa 2 games, the first 2 games, we've seen it all year. They bounce back, they come back, they never get down. Just when it looked like the bottom's going to fall in, they bounce back, and they've done it all year. And you just expect it. I just expect it now when they're not going to have a losing streaks, long losing. Yeah. Those are too good. and they do too many things well.
That's a good way to put it. Luke, because you edited, I wrote a piece last night, no brilliant new stuff in there, except the take that Saturday night's performance by Grayson Rodriguez may change everything in how the Orioles should be perceived as to whether they can make a deep playoff run. They've got the best record of any team in the American League, so it shouldn't be all that surprising. But I thought Saturday night changed everything.
Yeah, and your column on Grayson will be available on PressBoxOnline.com tomorrow morning. So readers will be able to check it out then. But yeah, you basically just summarized your story there in a couple sentences. But yeah, I mean, he was electric on Saturday, and at a time when the Orioles desperately needed it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the signs of a true top of the rotation ace.
That was a game where you said to somebody, put your big boy pants on, and he put them on.
Right.
And he wore them.
And right from Jump Street in that game, attacking the top of the zone with his fastball, challenging race hitters. The second time through the order the previous night, Jack Flaherty started falling behind guys. You had mentioned me via text, and the first time through the order, he was jumping ahead of guys, which is something he had struggled with. And then he fell back into those bad habits. Second time through the order, fell behind guys, got hit around. Grayson was ahead of hitters the entire night, overpowering fastball at the top of the zone. As Ross mentioned, a really good changeup. And then he had a good breaking ball as well. Also something that Ross mentioned, no more cutter. That is something that he threw his first go around in the major leagues, first 10 starts in the major leagues before getting demoted. He threw that cutter about 10-15% of the time, and that got really hit around. It just wasn't a very good pitch. It was just basically a worse fastball for him. For some guys, the cutter is a good pitch. For other guys, it's just a worse fastball, right, Ross?
You can't throw it over the plate.
That was a
fastball.
And that was an issue for him. So he eliminated that. And the biggest thing for me is just a much better fastball command, much better tempo in his delivery, which allows him to throw more strikes. And he's just the way he attacked his demotion, no woe is me, just went to work, fixed the things that needed fixing, came back a much better version of himself. That tells me a lot of what I need to know about Grayson Rodriguez and the kind of pitcher he's going to be long-term.
Ross, Luke's point about the way he attacked his demotion. You've been around because you're down there when they come demoted.
Oh, yeah.
There's probably, I'm going to guess, 6 or 7 out of 10 are those MFs, what the hell am I doing back here? And there wasn't any of that with this kid.
Right.
He went to work on what the suggestions they made.
Yeah, well, one of the things, when you get lit up and get sent down, you can't come down complaining about a whole lot,
Right.
And that was
with a 7.6 ERA or
something. I mean, and for him, it wasn't his stuff. That wasn't the problem. The thing with the cutter, he eliminated that, but that's something that later on that he may be able to go to as a new pitch.
He
threw that away. He's not using it, and all of a sudden he breaks it out. In a couple of years, because that makes a lot of difference for a lot of pitchers that go to that. But the key to a cutter is keep it off the plate. You can't throw it on the plate. Like I said, it's a nothing fastball, and especially if you're throwing it right on right or left on left, it's flat. It breaks like this. Instead of a tilt. And if you don't throw it off the plate, in or out, you're asking for a problem. And obviously that happened. But he's eliminated those pitches, fastball, the curveball, the changeup. And those have been his big thing is fastball command and location with that. And when he does that and gets it, he's a guy that can, with his stuff, he can get behind and throw whatever he wants, really.
Yeah.
But the idea, once he gets ahead, it's all over.
Ross, you've seen pitchers that have arrived, that have had their arrival moment like this. How much does it do for their confidence moving forward? It's not something that's easily dismissed in the back of their head.
No, I mean, I'll tell you, once when you go out And the good thing is and I bring the defense the Orioles bring to the table. You can get hit and give up some line drives. Guys make plays. They hit some hard balls, and they do that. And the guys make plays. You go, oh wow, I can't lose tonight. I had it happen. Other guys I've seen it. And when you do that, then you're not afraid. You don't become defensive. As a pitcher, you become defensive. You don't want to throw the ball over the plate. You start picking. Now you fall behind. Now you got to throw it over. And if you don't, you walk the guy, and the next guy hits a 2-run homer instead of a solo home run. So you become aggressive, and knowing that if I do make a bad pitch, the guys hit it, somebody's going to run it down usually. So that the confidence builds there. But when you're doing well and you locate pitches, you can change speeds. You can throw an off-speed pitch behind an account. Now you're going, I got it, and what's good about also is you're able to make adjustments when things aren't going right. You've got the feel, okay, this is what I'm not doing. I can feel that. Now I got to figure out a way to make the change. Hats off to the Oriole pitching people.
Yeah.
For what they've done with him and several of the other pitchers, that have came over and that have came through the ranks of the minor leagues. Man, you got to tip your hat to them.
So let me go somewhere else now, because we got Grayson all set for the playoffs, but there's a guy wearing number 15. He's made about 5 or 6 starts with the Orioles, not doing well at all. He's somewhat, I think, really mystified by it himself, doesn't quite understand it. I had Ryan Spielborg on the show the other day when I sat in for Glenn Clark. He said a pitcher like Clark, who's had some serious shoulder problems, is dealing with, he can't find a release point. Can you address that? And we're at September 19th right now, 18th tonight. Is it too late to get him 2 or 3 one-inning efforts in to see if he belongs even on the roster for the postseason? Ron?
Yeah, no, that's tough. It's really hard when the guys have arm issues, shoulder, whatever.
Yeah.
That one of the goals is to get your velo back to where it was before. And that's and in this day and age now, velo is the one thing they want to do. But as we saw with John Means, he was pitching great, changing speeds, doing his thing, and then all of a sudden he tries to
add 3 miles an hour to the velocity.
And he starts getting hit. Now he's a different pitcher. He was having success. Why change if you're having success? Believe me, the hitters will let you know when you need to change. But you can hear that, But,
so would your guess be that he ends up being off the roster for the playoffs, or do you think there's a chance they see him as, hey, this guy still can, for 1 inning, he can come in and just let it rip?
Well, very possible. I mean, I think they have a few decisions they have to make before playoff time. And, again, how the starters do will determine what kind of bullpen when they make that decision. But, if the guys are having a problem and they're struggling, especially command-wise coming off of an injury, or you have maybe have a minor problem, it's tough. And again, it's the end of the season. Some of these guys are a little fatigued, and when you get a little fatigued, you try to add extra when you should be going the other way. Guys don't do that a lot of times. They try, I'm going to throw a little bit harder. Now you don't think about location as much. You're just thinking about that velo thing, and then that affects your location. So it's just kind of a wait and see and go from what happens from here on out. It's only 2 weeks.
Yeah. Luke, yesterday, I think we were basking in the glow of Saturday night's performance by Rodriguez, the great comeback victory. The club regained their footing 2 games in front of Tampa, but the schedule makers have a little trick in store for the Orioles. If they don't really get after it in Houston, and Houston desperately needs to win every game they can. Right. Tampa Bay is hosting a really banged up basically a AAA team with the Angels.
Right.
They've got them 3 while we're in Houston for 3. The Orioles need to be pretty careful these next 3 days, don't they?
Yeah, it's obviously a key road trip. The Orioles have what amounts to a 3-game lead, considering the tiebreaker as well. But they got to find the bats at a more consistent rate than they have, because the last few games, obviously they did well against Tyler Glasnow, who did not look great on Saturday. A lot of cutters. We were talking about cutters before, Ross. He threw a lot of cutters in the middle of the plate on Saturday.
They got tallywhacked.
Tallywhacking.
Yeah, they did.
And so, and
Stan
obviously,
likes that.
I love it. I love it.
Obviously they didn't find the bats until late in the 9th inning yesterday, but other than that, it's been pretty quiet, in terms of the offense. So they've got to, and they go up against I think a 3-time Cy Young winner tonight. So easy task tonight against Justin Verlander. So, but they do get Hunter Brown and Christian Javier, who have had up and down seasons each of the next 2 days. So we'll see what happens in Houston. The Astros have not been playing great baseball.
Nope.
They
They lost this past week. They were 2-4. They lost 2 out of 3 against Oakland, 2 out of 3 to Kansas City.
Right.
It's-
Bottom dwellers.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, the biggest Astros win of the year, well, one of them was that game where they beat Felix at Camden Yards. Kyle Tucker did the deed. And then they had a huge series at the ballpark in Arlington, or formerly known as the ballpark in Arlington, and they swept the Rangers, and they scored, I don't know how many runs, 40 runs, 35 runs, whatever it was. Other than that, it's been a pretty uninspiring season for the Astros, but they're so talented that they're in first place in a very competitive division. So we'll see what they've got. 2 teams who need to win some ball games, that's for sure.
Yeah, they can't rest on their laurels, though, over the last 2 days in these next 3 games in Houston. A win in game 1 would be absolutely huge. Ross, there was a report yesterday, late in the day. I think it was Mike Elias that told a reporter that Felix Bautista actually threw a bit of a bullpen session. Luke, if you know any of the particulars on that, do you?
I just read that it was a bullpen session. I don't know how hard he was throwing.
Right.
I don't know the amount of breaking balls he was. I don't know, but he was throwing from a mound.
Yeah,
which is something. That's a step up. That's a step in his progression. So Ross would know much better than us about what that means.
Yeah, it's with what they're dealing with. It's with the elbow. I would, it's kind of scary. Again, obviously they know more, and they don't let much out of the bag about what's going on with guys.
Nope.
But they're pretty quiet about it. So depending on how serious this, obviously he would be a big if he is 100%. If he's not 100%,
yeah, right. Then it's best to shut him down.
You can't even take the chance.
Right.
I mean, I don't know why you would. But yeah.
I guess they're at a place where they realize that if he's going to ultimately get surgery, he's going to miss all of next year. He's not going to be back miraculously in August or September, partly because they're choosing to wait. But maybe they think that the tear is so small that he can get through this and then get a winter of rest and maybe a couple PRP injections and be good to go. But that if they make it worse, it's going to be repaired anyway in the surgery.
I don't. Maybe he can't make it worse.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
I've heard injuries like that. Now I don't know, and again, they know more than that. But with him throwing off the mound is, that's a step right there. And to even have him do that, you go, wait a minute, maybe this is not as bad as they're putting on to be.
Right.
The other thing is. You're talking about, you got John Means going tonight, I believe, correct?
Yep, Means against Verlander tonight.
He threw fairly decent the last time out.
Yeah.
So if he throws well, he's eligible to be on the roster, correct?
Yes, he's eligible.
So that's a possibility right there. And he might be a guy that, depending on what happens the next 2 weeks, that could be a guy out of the pen for short spurts or even
Yep.
start a game.
Yep.
I mean, depending on what happens. So that's a good thing. There's two good things there, I think. You know, with two guys that one's coming back from injury, one's injured. So we're not really so sure about Batista. Hopefully it's not as bad, but to be thrown off the mound, that's a pretty good sign right there.
Luke, can you explain to our viewers a little bit? Means would be available to pitch in the postseason.
Mhm.
Bautista would be available.
Mhm.
Jorge Lopez, though, was acquired after September 1st, correct?
Correct.
So technically, even though he's now on the 40-man roster, is there any way that legitimately they can get him on a postseason roster?
My understanding is that those loopholes were closed in the last CBA.
Okay.
That if you were acquired after August 31st, you are not eligible
Eligible,
for
period.
the
Okay.
postseason.
Okay.
So
So again, that enhances the chance that Jack Flaherty could still be on the roster in the postseason.
yeah, potentially.
What if there's an injury?
Go ahead, Russ.
I mean, well, obviously, if
He's saying that even with an injury, you
Right.
can't bring in
Oh, yeah.
somebody acquired after September 1st.
okay,
Right.
all right. There has to be
So
somebody,
Jorge-
right?
He's
Yeah.
a great insurance policy for next year, in my opinion. You know.
Yeah.
Let me take a break right now and we'll finish up with some questions, some more talk. But right now, I want to talk a little bit about the Costas Inn. Went there last night, guys, to sample the wares. And I got to tell you, the Maryland steamed crabs were delicious and sizable and meaty. The crab soup was, I hate that expression, but it was to die for. It was absolutely fantastic. And it was great to see Nick and Pete and Mr. Triantofilos out there, the whole family. They had a really busy day of sports fans going into the Costas Inn, watching the Orioles, watching the Ravens, and eating a lot of crabs yesterday. So if you're in the market for crabs or a night out at the Costas Inn, give them a call, 410-477-1975 is the number you need to reserve your crabs in advance. You can get the prices, the sizes, and make a plan of attack to eat some crabs and root for your teams down this next stretch. Great, some exciting teams. The University of Maryland football team's exciting. Ravens are exciting. And of course, the Orioles have captured everybody's attention. And you can watch them all out at the Costas Inn, 4100 North Point Boulevard. Back with more of the show in the remaining time. We have the Boston Red Sox, Ross. They lowered the boom on their general manager. Chaim Bloom ended up living as long in a Boston organization as did Ben Cherington, Dave Dombrowski, and now Chaim Bloom. 3 straight GMs let go at about the 1,400 game mark. I think Ben Cherington was like 1,372, but all 3 of them lasted the same amount of time. In the process here, do you think Alex Cora is in trouble? They've now sunk after a 1-6 week. They've now sunk to last place, or do you think they blame it all on Chaim Bloom?
Well, I think a little bit of everybody's going to take the blame for this, you know. And usually when that happens, they ship them out and they bring a new crew in.
Yeah.
So I mean, who took over for the Red Sox people? Did anybody come in?
It's probably the second in command, and I don't even know who it is
I
right
can't think
now.
of who it is.
There's talk that the most logical guy they might turn to, because I put out there that I could see Theo Epstein going back to Boston.
Somebody I saw that.
But it's not really being championed or put out there that much.
Yeah.
But one name that is Mike Hazen, who's been the president of baseball ops for the Arizona Diamondbacks.
Right.
And he was a graduate of the Red Sox. That's where he
I
got
mean,
his.
you look at who they bring in, and then you go, okay, now we'll see the moves come. But I have to think, that there will be something happening. you think with the Yankees too, is bad a year as it's been, but they've been playing well of late, so that's a good sign for them. But yeah, I look to see some moves come up. One of the things that Council with Arizona, he may be in demand.
He may be in demand, and he may be in very much demand in Queens under David Stearns to be the manager of the New York Mets. I don't think the Stearns thing bodes well for Buck Showalter's life expectancy in Queens.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens, but there's going to be some action, probably before the World Series and definitely after. But they just do things during the World Series now and say the hell with it, which is kind of a strange thing. But
Luke, John Henry, he brought in Chaim Bloom, and I think he wanted Bloom to be very Dombrowski-like, but do it cheaper and start to build the organization. The irony is the work he did in getting draft picks, and their farm system is in a little better shape now. Mm-hmm. The next few years they'll get some. But his one big signing is this Yoshida, the left fielder from Japan. And I got to tell you, if I'm John Henry, because I've had him on my fantasy baseball team, they stopped about 2.5 weeks ago. They stopped playing him every day. He plays about 3 times a week. He's a real lightweight. He's got like 14, 15 home runs, 65 RBIs. This is a guy they gave like $75 or $85 million to.
Yeah, it seems like he's hit a wall, which I guess in his first season in the major leagues is not totally a surprise.
Yeah.
But I thought you saw what he's capable of in the first 2 or 3 months of the season when he had a really good eye, had a little bit of pop, but not a good defender.
No.
Even trying to hide him in that little left field at Fenway Park, not a great defender. So that's something they'll have to address. They also spent a lot of money on Trevor Story, who has been mostly hurt through his time, I think 2 years in Boston. Now, as you said, the farm system has started to produce some really good players like Tristan Casas, who will probably finish second or third in American League Rookie of the Year voting.
And this guy Abreu looked pretty good against
he's a
the
good-looking
Orioles.
ball player.
Yeah.
And they've got some prospects, some really good-looking prospects.
Sedani, Rafaela.
Yeah, coming up through the farm system here in the next year or two. So, however, their pitching staff has been a total disaster. From Jump Street. That first series at home against the Orioles, they scuffled, and it's really continued all year. And it has been a pretty good Red Sox offense as it normally is, but it's a different offense on the road. It's a pretty fearsome offense at Fenway Park on the road, totally different. But they've got to figure out the pitching. That's going to be job one for whoever the next general manager is. That the pitching really went sideways for the Red Sox. So, and if you don't have starting pitching, you're really fighting uphill, regardless of how good your offense is. So, that's probably task number one.
They're a team that's on the rebuild. I'm wondering there's an option there to re-sign Justin Turner for a second year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering whether he'd be acquirable for a prospect, and might he fit the Orioles for 1 year, and maybe they spike it with giving him another option for the second year. All he's done is drive in 90 runs up to this point, hitting 280, and he's hit 24, 25 bombs.
Hey, for me, he's been one of the best offseason additions that anybody has made for the value. I think we saw over the weekend the number one guy in that regard, and that's Zach Eflin, who signed for 3 years, $30 million, and twirled a gem against the Orioles. And he's going to be at the forefront, I think, of the Rays pitching plans next year. So he would be like my number one, free agent win of the year for a team. But Justin Turner's up there too. He's had a really good year.
Terrific season.
And I got to give Stan credit. He said that Justin Turner should be on the Orioles radar. We didn't hear anything about the Orioles being in on Justin Turner. And basically Turner has done what he did in LA for the past several years that was. So, he's just a professional hitter, takes great at bats every time up. He's got pop, on base skills, the whole 9 yards. He's just
Interest-
old. I mean, that's the only thing.
Interestingly, he had a very poor first half in 2022, but you can't sometimes look at the totality of a player's stats. You got to look how if you're wondering whether he's old, his second half of the year showed you he wasn't old. You know,
Well, where would he play, Stan?
What's that?
Where would he play?
He would play. He would be a different version of Adam Frazier. He'd play some first base for me. He'd DH some for me, and he could play a little bit of third base too. I mean, I think he's a terrific guy, and he's one of the things about this team that you wonder about, and it's not a definite yet because we got to see how Rutschman and Henderson and Hayes and Mullins all do. Is the inexperience in postseason baseball. Turner would have fit that I think he just would have fit this team this year, and I think he would fit them next year as well. And he's only in the
Tesla will be here.
That's an interesting an interesting situation. To me, he's not the type of player that Mike Elias likes. I think the plate discipline isn't what they prescribe for their players. But I will admit, as much as I ragged on him and worried about it, when he came back up after the vertigo, he seemed to be a different hitter.
Yeah, no,
I mean, I think he's walked 15 to 20 times since he's been back, and that's basically 5 weeks. That used to be a season of walks for Ryan Mountcastle.
I look at a guy that obviously has done that, has since he came back, has been a little bit different hitter, not the type of guy that chases everything thrown out of the zone, especially when the pitcher's ahead in the count. But here's a guy who gets some injuries every now and then that sets him back. So that's what I was getting at. You think they may try to move him and get something, and that would open up a door for a veteran guy.
It would open the door for Kerstead or Santander to end up at first base, or a platoon there,
But again, and seeing what happens with the playoffs, I really think these kids are I don't think it's going to affect them. I could be totally wrong, but
it has that feel right now that
they
they're
have
not being
played
affected.
so well for so long.
Yeah.
We're just going to go out and show up. And I saw an article yesterday, or maybe it was today, I forget, that when Rodriguez pitched, the catcher, Rutschman said something to him as they're walking in from the bullpen after warming up. He says, let's just play this like there's 30,000, 35,000 of our friends in the stands. Let's go out and have fun. So, I mean, that they're having a good time doing this, and I don't see, they don't play like there's any nerves, and so I don't see how, they may take this on to ever how far it goes,
Well, the fact that they haven't lost a whole series, haven't been swept in a series for close to, I guess, 93 or 94 series now, that's a pretty remarkable. I don't know if it's a historical record, but it's a statement. And like you alluded to, that they won't have long losing streaks. I mean, when people were jumping off the bridge this week when they lost the first game and then the second game against Tampa, that was a 4-game losing streak. And I had to remind people, I said the 1983 team had 6 3-game losing streaks and 2 7-game losing streaks. But this team does it all.
Yeah.
Well, speed and defense never go in a slump. All right, guys. Exciting series starts. Luke, I think you and I are going to try a little post game Wednesday after the Astros series on StreamYard.
Yeah.
Probably 5 minutes after the game starts, we'll be on talking baseball.
Or after the game ends, or after Brandon Hyde talks?
I think we go right when the game ends.
Okay.
All right.
Then
we don't have to deal with those great questions that
okay.
people ask. All right. All right. Ross, we'll talk to you. If we do it during the playoffs, Ross, you're more than welcome to join us.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right, buddy. All right. That's it for tonight. Still waiting on a guest for this week. The second Zoom we'll work something out. But Luke and I will be on Wednesday night, right after the last pitch of the Orioles Astros game, within 5 minutes of the last pitch of the game. For Ross Grimsley, Luke Jackson, and our sponsors, the Costas Inn and Superbook Sports, I'm Stan the Fan, and we'll see you down the road pretty soon. Bye.